Let's get a quick take on the Colorado Democratic Party soliciting opinions on a new name for its annual dinner. It's been known as the Jefferson-Jackson dinner for much of its 85-year history, but party officials decided to drop the two names due to both presidents owning slaves and Jackson's role in the Indian Wars. Pat Calhoun from Westward, do you have a recommendation for a new name for the dinner?
I would say strike up the bland, because there is just no personality left. Although I have an alternative, which is the John C. Calhoun dinner. At one point, Jackson wanted to strangle my very, 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 very distant relative who was a slave owner, and I suppose I should be changing my name now too. Although he was very pro-states' rights, so for pot purposes, I think I'll have to keep it.
That's a good move. I like the consistency. David Kopel from the Independence Institute and DU Law School. I get the sensitivity, and we talked about before we started rolling that a lot of different states have gone through this. But what's your take on that? Is this a little bit too much, especially the idea of Jefferson?
Of course, it's ridiculous. Jefferson's one of the founders of the country, and Jackson was a great president for the people. His Indian policy was very wrong, but he led the fight against the Bank of the United States, that concentrated swamp creature, and fought hard and ultimately defeated it and saved this country for the rest of the century from central banking. But let's presume the rule is you can't have owned slaves. You have to be a Democratic president, no slaves, and for prudence, let's say also no sex scandals. So the available candidates are Martin Van Buren, Franklin Pierce, Grover Cleveland, Harry Truman, Jimmy Carter, and of course Barack Obama. So I would suggest make it the Cleveland-Truman dinner, which captures two excellent presidents who represent different sides of the Democratic Party, which should be in coalition with each other.
That's actually a productive solution there, David. I really like that. I hope the Democrats are listening. Eric Sonderman, political analyst, in your days in the past as a consultant, if you were still a consultant and the Colorado Democratic Party called you about handling the situation, what would your recommendation be?
Well, when I think of days in the past, I think of many evenings spent at that dinner 20 and 30 and more years ago, and glad that in my current role I'm no longer called to do that, because it is often an interminable evening and it is often painful. I mean, it's the Democrats now really trashing their heroes and part of this movement of knocking down statues across the South and whatever, which I think has some danger or certainly can be taken to an excess. The name I'm going to come up with is, there's only one thing these days, Dominic, that unites Democrats. They don't know what they're for, but they sure know what they're against. So I think they need to call this the Donald Trump dinner, because that is the unifying factor for Democrats these days. Democrats need to be paying Donald Trump rent, because he's taken up residency deep inside their heads.
Another good suggestion. Rounding at the panel, Penfield Tate, attorney with QTAC Rock, also a longtime state lawmaker. What do you think about this rebranding opportunity for the Colorado Democratic Party's annual dinner?
Well, and I get the rebranding. It seems a little silly at this late date, but I get the fact that you want to distance yourself from very problematic people in your history. The problem is everybody's got issues. So you probably need to name it after a soap opera like Search for Tomorrow or Dazed and Confused or something, so that you're talking about a theme and not a person, because we all have issues. And so anybody they name it after is going to have issues. So I'm thinking Search for Tomorrow may work.